Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're looking at something a little different.
Yeah, this isn't a big book or anything like we usually do.
Right. We're focusing on an article by Nicholas Bourbaki. He's looking at AI and the future of work, especially for, well, people like us, millennials.
And he doesn't hold back. Some of the stuff is pretty
I
intense.
know right from the start he's like, forget this whole co-intelligence thing.
You know, humans and AI all working happily together.
Exactly. Bourbaki thinks that's probably temporary at best.
And he makes a really interesting point. He says this whole co-intelligence setup is basically companies training their AI replacements.
So like we're teaching the AI to do our job.
That's the argument, yeah. He even uses self-checkouts at the grocery store as an example.
Yeah, I get it. Remember how those were such a pain at first?
Right. Unexpected item in the bagging area, constantly.
Employees had to come over and fix it all the time.
But then those systems, they got better, right?
And they needed fewer people to run them, so jobs were lost.
And Bourbaki's saying the same thing's happening in offices. It's just not as obvious. AI is being integrated everywhere, learning as it goes.
He even lays out this, I don't know, kind of scary four-step process for how he thinks AI might take over jobs.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, AI just observes. It watches how we work, learns the workflows.
Makes sense. That's how a lot of machine learning works.
Then, people are still in charge, but they're supervising the AI, making sure it's doing things right, correcting mistakes.
Okay, so far so good, I guess.
But then, step three, one person is managing, like, multiple AIs.
Yeah.
And each AI is doing the work of several employees.
Oh, I see where this is going. Suddenly you need way fewer people to get the same amount of work done.
Exactly. And then, Bourbaki says, finally, human oversight, it's barely even needed anymore.
So you just have a handful of people, like,
Yeah.
overseeing these huge AI workforces.
That's what he's suggesting, yeah. And the thing is, he doesn't think this is just for manual labor or, like, super repetitive stuff.
He thinks even creative and strategic roles are vulnerable.
Oh, yeah. He even uses this phrase, get real dumbass.
Whoa. Okay, tell me how you really feel, Bourbaki.
Right. Like, is he saying millennials are all screwed? We're the ones who were told to focus on all these soft skills, collaboration, all that.
I think he's saying those skills alone might not cut it. Like, they're important, but not enough.
So what are we supposed to do? Should we all just, like, learn to code? Become data scientists?
I don't think that's his point.
Right.
He talks more about understanding AI, even if we're not the ones building it.
Okay, so, like, in the past, you had to know how to use a specific software program. But now it's more about knowing how to work with the AI that's using that program.
Yeah, and maybe even writing its own code. It's almost like, think about driving a car.
Okay.
You might be fine just knowing how to drive, but if something breaks down, you need a mechanic, someone who gets how the engine works.
So we need to be more like the mechanics, not just the drivers when it comes to AI.
Exactly. Understanding how it works so we can guide how it's used, how it develops.
But that's a lot to ask, right? Like most of us are already feeling overwhelmed just keeping up with our jobs now. And now we're supposed to become, like, AI whisperers too.
It's definitely a lot to process, yeah. And we're just getting started with Boubaki's ideas.
Because then he goes into this whole other thing about digital twins.
Yeah, that one really caught my eye, like straight out of science fiction.
Basically, the idea that companies could create AI replicas of their employees, like
Yeah.
trained on their work habits, their decision-making, everything.
It's almost like a digital clone of yourself. Okay, now that's where things start to feel a little creepy.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about in part two.
It's wild to think about, right? Like, how does all this play out for millennials specifically?
It's true. We're the ones who grew up with all this technology, the internet, smartphones, you name it. Supposed to be the digital natives.
But now AI is like changing the whole game.
And Bourbaki, he doesn't let us off easy. He basically says, those skills we were told were so important, like communication, critical thinking, teamwork, those might not be enough in an AI-driven world.
He's not saying they're useless,
Right.
but we need to think about them differently. Like, how do they work with AI, not just in a world without it?
Okay, so then what are we supposed to be doing? Is he saying everyone needs to go learn how to code or something? Become a data scientist?
Not exactly. He actually talks about, he calls them resilient roles. So these are jobs that, require uniquely human skills that AI would have a harder time replicating.
Give me an example. Like, what kind of job are we talking about?
So he mentions things like robotics maintenance, where you're actually physically working with the machines, or AI ethics, thinking about all the complex moral and societal questions that come with this technology. places where human judgment and empathy are really important.
It makes you wonder if all those soft skills we've been developing, maybe those are actually the foundation for these new resilient roles. It's not about getting rid of them. It's like applying them in a new way.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. Like we're being asked to level up our skills, think more critically about where they fit in this new landscape.
Exactly. And Bourbaki keeps reminding us this isn't about just waiting to see what happens. It's about actively shaping this future, not just reacting to it.
Right. It's not about just surviving the AI revolution. It's about thriving in it, finding those areas where human skills are not just valuable, but absolutely essential.
I like that. Okay, I'm feeling a little more optimistic now. But that whole digital twin thing still, it kind of freaks me out.
I get it. It's like the idea of companies essentially cloning their employees. It brings up so many questions, ethical questions, philosophical questions.
Yeah. Like, what does that mean for our individuality, for our privacy? If our digital selves can be replicated and maybe even exploited.
Exactly. And like, who owns those digital twins? The companies, the employees they're based on. It's a huge legal and ethical gray area.
It's almost like we need a whole new set of laws just to deal with this stuff, like a digital bill of rights for workers.
That's a great idea. Something that protects our digital identities, our privacy, our right to fair compensation, even in a world where our work can be replicated by AI.
That's a big challenge, though.
It is. But Bourbaki's point is, we need to be thinking about these things now before it's too late.
He even mentions that, like, contracts might start to include digital twin clauses.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, like imagine signing a job offer that gives your employer the right to create an AI version of you.
That's crazy.
It's like we're stepping into uncharted territory here, and we need to make sure we're not giving away more than we realize.
We need to be informed to understand the implications of these technologies and to advocate for ourselves, for our rights.
This is heavy stuff. It's clear, though, that this AI revolution, it's going to have a huge impact on work, on everyone's jobs. And it's up to us to try to shape that impact in a way that benefits everyone, not just a few.
That's a good point. It's not a spectator sport, right? We have to be active participants.
Exactly. And that's a good place to stop for now. Okay, so we're back. We've been talking about this article by Nicholas Bourbaki, all about AI and how it's going to change work, especially for us millennials.
Right. And we've talked about a lot of pretty intense stuff, like how this co-intelligence idea might just be a temporary phase before AI takes over more jobs.
And then there's that whole digital twin concept, which is just wild. Before we wrap things up, I kind of want to circle back to that. It just feels like so important.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things that just makes you think, what is the future going to be like? You know?
Right. Like, just imagine your company creates a digital twin of you. It's trained on all your work habits, how you make decisions, everything.
So basically like an AI version of you running around in the digital world, and it knows how you work, maybe even thinks like you.
Exactly. And that's what I keep getting stuck on. If they have that, do they even need you anymore?
It's like you could get fired, but your digital self just keeps working. That's a pretty messed up thought.
It is. It's like, who owns this digital twin? Is
Yeah.
it you,
Yeah.
the company? And what if they start tweaking it? Like making your digital self even more efficient, but in ways you wouldn't agree with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like your digital self could be working against your own interests, and you might not even know it.
And right now, there are no rules for any of this. It's like the Wild West of digital labor.
Exactly. So the question is, what can we even do about it? How do we make sure this technology doesn't just turn into a nightmare for workers?
I think it starts with just knowing about it, being aware of what's happening, what the implications are. The more we understand, the better we can advocate for ourselves, push for safeguards.
It's like anything, right? Knowledge is power.
Exactly. So it's not just about learning new technical skills. It's about understanding this bigger picture.
The potential consequences.
And I think that's going to require, like, everyone working together. Policymakers, ethicists, tech experts, and of course us, the workers. We all need to be at the table.
I think that's the only way we're going to create a future where technology actually helps people instead of, the other way around. We can't just be passive about this.
Bourbaki's article, it's like a wake-up call, I think. He's pushing us to really think about these things and to do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. I know it's a lot to take in, but hopefully this gives you some things to think about, maybe some ideas for how to navigate your own career, with all this crazy stuff happening.
And who knows what the future holds, but at least we're having the conversation.
Exactly. And on that note, Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, stay curious.